Today I'm going to talk to you about push-ups. So a little bit of advice about how to do a really effective push-up. Often when we do push-ups we see them with the elbows quite wide, so it's about a big movement with the elbows far apart. I'm going to suggest that you have the elbows quite narrow in towards the body, and the reason for this is twofold. One, it stabilises the shoulder girdle a little bit more, so you're less likely to encounter injuries and problems if you can just slightly rotate the arms outwards in the shoulder sockets, so essentially spiralling them outwards even though your hands are still on the floor. And the other advantage to that little rotation movement is that it biases the back of the arm and the back of the shoulder. So often we tend to be a little bit weaker through the back of the arm. Women of a certain age, you'll know what I'm talking about. It gets a little bit more loose in that area. But also the back of the shoulder needs to work a little bit harder because many of us find ourselves slightly rounded nowadays with the everyday activities that we undertake. So you want to really work the back of the shoulder and the back of the arm rather than just the front of the chest. That's the reason for that little rotation spiral. The second really important thing is to keep the shoulder blades as wide apart as possible. So again, you're working on stabilising the shoulders, keeping those shoulder blades wide rather than letting them narrow towards each other. So if I turn my back on you, we can start by practicing that against a wall. So you can go with your hands flat against the wall, the middle fingers pointing straight up. And as you slowly bend the elbows, you want to be rotating the arms outwards in your sockets, in your shoulder sockets, so that the elbows draw downwards straight towards the floor. So do this with flat hands if you possibly can. And the other thing you'll see is that I'm not narrowing the shoulder blades like this. I'm keeping them really wide. And the way that I do that is by pushing the wall away from me all the time. So even though I'm bending the elbows to get closer to the wall, I want to try and feel that I'm not getting closer to it with my chest. I'm pushing my chest back away from the wall to keep that natural width of the shoulder blades all the way through the motion. So that's quite a nice way to practice it against the wall, but it's very low load. So we're going to take that down onto the mat now, and we'll talk through that same detail with your hands on the floor. So again, feel that you can spread the hands into the floor with your fingers wide, the middle fingers point straight forwards. I'm just using push-up handles because I can't bend at the wrist on one hand. So once you've got your hands in place, you can do this either with your legs bent, as I'm showing you now, that's a little easier, or you can go with your legs completely straight and really glue them together so that the leg muscles are working. So once we get into this position, we need a little bit more work through the abdominals to help us to defy gravity. Gravity wants us to do this. It wants us to collapse towards the floor. So we're having to push the floor away to really get the shoulder blades nice and wide. And instead of just thinking about the shoulder blades widening apart, you can think about the front of the body lifting, your rib cage lifting and your abdominals lifting to really resist the effect of gravity and to help us draw upwards. The challenge is to do that without rounding the back. So we're still in the natural curves of our spine, but as we push the floor away, the shoulder blades are widening in that position. Once we then take it into a bent arm position, that is harder to achieve. So the more we bend the elbows, the harder we're going to have to work to keep those shoulder blades apart. So as soon as I start bending the elbows, I want to dip down. My body wants to give in to gravity. So I'm finding a constant sense of the rib cage lifting upwards, away from the floor, to meet the shoulder blades. Again, as I bend the elbows are narrowing towards the waist because I've got that rotation of my arms, outward spiral through the arms. And the closer I get to the floor, the more I need to work to resist the drop of my chest and instead to really draw up through the rib cage and keep it snug to the shoulder blades. So of course you can go with straight legs as well, same thing, body in a nice straight line, but the more the elbows bend, the more you've got to work to lift that chest and keep the shoulder blades stable. So obviously for some people it's all the way down to the floor, and ideally you do want to develop that strength. If you've got it in you, you want to be able to push yourself to your full range. So by all means go for big push-ups, get your nose on the floor if you can, but you want to keep your body in a strong straight line, abs lifting, and most importantly don't forget that widening of the shoulder blade, so you just feel like you're pushing the floor away and resisting gravity all the way through. So I hope that was useful. Thank you very much for watching today, and I hope that you'll be able to join me next Wednesday at 1 o'clock.